Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Friday. The weekend is very nearly here. It might even be here by the time you're watching or listening to this show. Big game for Arsenal tomorrow, of course, against Everton. I say it every week, but they are all big games now. We slipped up against Fulham last time out, dropped 2 points. Can't be affording to do that again this weekend. 3 points, an absolute necessity at the Emirates against Sean Dyche's struggling team. Mikel Arteta is going to be speaking a little bit later on today at his pre-match press conference at London Colney, where we should hear plenty more from him ahead of that game. See if he gives us any team news updates. See if he says anything on some of the injured players, Gabriel, Calafiori, those sort of players. We get any sort of updates on them and when potentially they could return. So, yeah, keep your eyes peeled for all the usual stuff later on today in terms of the press conference. I might well come back and record another show a little bit later on this evening or late afternoon anyway, sort of going through the main headlines from Mikel Arteta's press conference. Just before we get stuck into it, I haven't got my usual microphones today. It's upstairs. My wife's in a meeting with work upstairs on the computer, so I can't go charging in there to get it out of the bedroom where I was filming yesterday's show. So, yeah, hopefully the sound is fine today, even without it. And apologies if it is not. Right, let's get started on today's show. I want to basically focus on what Mikel Arteta might do for the game against Everton, because he's got some quite big decisions to make, I think. Obviously, his options are pretty limited unless we have a host of injured players back, which we're probably not expecting. Maybe we'll get good news on Calafiori or Gabriel a little bit later on in the show. We'll have to wait and see. But if we don't, and the players who missed the game in midweek against Monaco in Champions League are not back, then it'll be interesting to see what Mikel Arteta does in terms of his team selection, specifically, I think, when it comes to the defence. Now, Lewis-Skelly obviously made his first Champions League start. He came in and played left-back in the absence of Calafiori, Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, obviously, players like that. It was Lewis-Skelly who got the nod against Monaco, and he played very, very well. Tired in the second half, understandably so, but played very, very well. And we had Thomas Partey starting at right-back. Now, what's Mikel going to do for tomorrow's game? I think this is a really interesting point. I would personally, and this is just my opinion, absolutely stick with Lewis-Skelly. He played very well. His confidence level is going to be high. He brings that sort of natural left-sidedness to that team, which I think is very, very important. And the crucial thing, of course, if you play Lewis-Skelly at left-back, you can play Jurriën Timber at right-back. Now, Mikel took the opportunity to give Jurriën Timber a bit of a rest in midweek. We had Thomas Partey playing at right-back and Timber was on the bench. He came on in the second half. I do wonder if he's going to be managing these two players. And I think he has to manage these two players because they're the only right-back options. You don't really want something happened to either of them. It'd be a bit of a nightmare at the moment. The fact that Partey played against Monaco or started against Monaco and Timber came on, I wonder if we might see kind of the opposite thing this weekend. So you play Lewis-Skelly at left back and then you bring Timber back in and maybe, give Timber sort of 60, 65 minutes against Everton. You have Thomas Partey potentially on the bench and then you can bring him on in the second half, take Timber off, manage his minutes, manage his loads, and sort of move forward like that. That would be my personal best option for this game. It'll be very interesting to see if Mikel did that. Lewis-Skelly was great against Monaco. The confidence he showed, the ability he had on the ball, when he was put under pressure. I mean, the move he did, the part he played in the move that led to the opening goal, of course, was just a perfect example of what he's about. He was getting pressed by the Monaco player, could have panicked if he'd have lost possession there. It could have been a very dangerous, could have led to a Monaco counter-attack, but he backed himself. He stayed calm in the situation, got himself out of trouble, moved forward, played a lovely pass through the lines to Gabriel Jesus, then produced that wonderful cross for Bukayo Saka to score. And you could see how happy all the Arsenal players were with Lewis-Skelly. They went over, congratulated him. Lots of praise for him from the manager, from his teammates after the game as well. Got a quote here from Mikel Merino on Lewis-Skelly. He said he's a really good kid, always humble, just trying to learn from the others, asking questions, not being worried about being judged for asking maybe a stupid question or whatever. But he's always just trying to learn with a positive attitude. And he's also that technical and physical level that will bring a lot of joy to the people who watch him play. I just thought that left-hand side, we'll talk about Mikel Merino in a little bit, actually. Got some comments from you guys on Mikel Merino, but I just thought that left-hand side just made Arsenal look a lot more balanced. I didn't think Merino had an amazing game. I thought he looked a little bit clumsy and nervous at times, but I thought he grew into the game. I thought he definitely gave Arsenal something down that left-hand side. The balance is there. You could see the sort of the heat map where Arsenal's attacks came from in that game. It was much more balanced in terms of not just heavily weighted to the right-hand side. You had the left-hand side where impactful as well. The first goal obviously came from that Jesus' cross. Merino got in some good positions down that left-hand side, did in the second half as well. Arsenal's left just looked a lot more of a threat than it has done in recent weeks. And I think having naturally left-sided players, maybe it's not exactly probably doesn't exactly take an expert to be able to say that if you have naturally left-sided players playing on the left-hand side in Lewis-Skelly, in Mikel Merino, then you're going to look a lot more balanced down that side. So, yeah, I thought Lewis-Skelly definitely did enough, played well enough to earn himself a start this weekend. I hope that's what Mikel does. I don't want to see Timber play at left back. I don't want to see Partey playing at right back for this game against Everton. I just think it affects the balance of the team too much. We saw it at Fulham last weekend. Neither of them played badly, Timber or Partey, in those positions, but it just affects the balance of the team and it affects them as an attacking force. I just think it's too much to keep doing it. And I think what Lewis-Skelly showed us in midweek was enough for him to get his start. It'll be interesting what Mikel says in his press conference later about the possibility of that. Let me know your thoughts on it. I'll be doing the preview show in the morning tomorrow where I'll look at my predicted 11. You want to get involved in that preview show, let me know your thoughts on who should be playing, the big decisions Mikel has to make. Give me a starting 11s. I'll pull them together as always and get them included in the preview show tomorrow. Right, we spoke about Mikel Merino briefly there. Obviously, at the weekend, midweek, sorry, it was the first time we've seen the Declan Rice, Mikel Merino, and Martin Odegaard midfield, which in the summer, when Merino signed, that was what I presumed was going to be Arsenal's and Mikel Arteta's first choice midfield going forward. It's taken us a long time because of injuries, unavailability for us to see that midfield. I thought it did okay in the game against Monaco. I thought all of them were fairly decent. Odegaard didn't have the best of games, so I thought Merino and Rice were decent. Lots of you thought Declan Rice was very, very good. Looking at the reactions, I think I gave him a 6 in my player ratings, and there seems to be a lot of angry responses to that, and felt he was worth much, much more. Both of them I thought looked tired in the second half. I was surprised it was Rice who went off rather than Merino, because I was looking at Merino when Jorginho was waiting to come on, and Merino looked absolutely exhausted. Rice did as well, to be fair. But Merino looked absolutely exhausted, and I was presumed he was going to go off and then Rice would move into the left 8 position, but it wasn't. Jorginho came on, played in the 6. Merino stayed on the pitch. And like I said, he did some good things. I did think there was a little hint of clumsiness about him at times when he was in possession, especially early on. It was sort of bounce off his shins and get away from him. But other than that, you know, it was a solid performance from Merino. And it's just going to be interesting to see if we start seeing this midfield more. Now he's finally got the option to do it. Obviously, I know Thomas Partey has been Arsenal's best midfielder this season. So I'm not saying that Thomas Partey needs to be dropped or anything like that, but it will be interesting to see if we do start to see this. There's obviously been talk in the last couple of days about Thomas Partey's contract situation and what's going to happen in the summer. You know, there hasn't been any contract talks yet with Thomas Partey. He's out of contract in the summer. Long-term planning, thinking if Arsenal aren't going to be sticking with Thomas Partey next season, what do they do for the second half of the season? Do you go with a midfield that's maybe got more of a long-term future at the football club? We'll wait and see. But you know, Declan Rice playing in that 6 role. I read a really good piece. Arsblog, as always, did a really good post this morning, and I see it in the comments. So many people seem to have a go at Declan Rice playing in the 6, which I just think is mad. I think he's a very, very good 6. He was signed as Arsenal's 6. He played very well when he was a 6. He still plays very well as a 6. His passing ability, people seem to just think is awful, which again I just don't agree with at all. And the stats back that up completely as well. And I think he brings an awful lot to playing in that number 6 role. It's very different to, say, a Thomas Partey or a Jorginho playing in that role, but he still brings an awful lot to that number 6 role. And if you can play Mikel Merino ahead of him in that natural sort of left 8 position, where you have that balance on the left-hand side, will that make Arsenal a more balanced and impressive looking team? I mean, there's interesting comments here. One from Nigel, one from D'Angelo. Nigel says, big questions on Merino for me. As skillful as he is, I'm not sure his brain and feet are quick enough at this level. He has a lot to prove to be first choice above Partey and Rice. Thing is that he's not going to be first choice above Partey and Rice, is he? Merino's maybe Partey, I suppose, if you consider Partey. Maybe Rice if you consider Rice as a left 8. I still consider Rice as a 6 in this team. I still think that's what Mikel Arteta's long-term plan will be Declan Rice playing at 6. But I think the interesting bit where you said feet aren't quick enough at this level. That's what I was talking about when I was saying sometimes the ball seemed to be bouncing off him a little bit. I think he couldn't quite sort his feet out enough. He did settle down into the game, though, after that. I always find he seems to take his time to get into a game. In my very brief glimpses I've seen so far of Merino, I always feel like the first 10, 15 minutes, he's not great, and then he grows into a game. D'Angelo, though, says, I thought the dynamic on the left side of the pitch worked really well with Merino playing in the left eight because he is left-footed. His work rate is also brilliant in making the underlapping runs for Martinelli. So, yeah, it's an interesting one, that whole how we're going to see Arsenal sort of move forward in the second half of the season, especially in midfield, because we just haven't been able to see the midfield that we saw against Monaco at all up to this point. Are we now going to start seeing it an awful lot more? We shall wait and see. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we see that midfield starting again, because I've got a feeling Thomas Partey, whatever happens, I'm not sure Partey plays this game. I think he starts on the bench and you rest him a little bit, because he started the game against Monaco, and keeping Partey and Jurriën Timber fit at the moment until Ben White comes back is absolutely essential. So you've got to manage their workload. Elsewhere, Reiss Nelson, really bad news this. He's out for a long, long time, Reiss Nelson, about 10 weeks. Really unlucky. He was playing in the Fulham game the other day. He was fine. He was going to come off, and the substitution couldn't be made. And as they were waiting to make it, he pulls his hamstring really, really badly. It's just like if the ball had gone out of play 30 seconds later or earlier, he would have probably been fine. It would have got him off and he would have been fine. But that extra 30 seconds waiting for the ball to go out of play so they could make the substitution, and he pulls his hamstring. And Marco Silva has now confirmed he's going to be out for up to 10 weeks with this injury. Now, Nelson's been having a good time at Fulham, made an impression there. He's getting minutes. And to have an injury like this now that could potentially rule you out for 10 weeks, what is that going to do for his season-long loan at Fulham? Is he going to come back the same player? Is he going to be able to get himself back in the team? It's a real shame for him. It's a shame for Arsenal, because I think the way he was playing, he would certainly be generating interest. I don't see Nelson having a future at Arsenal, obviously, but if he has a good loan spell at Fulham, he's got a good chance of selling him for some decent money next summer. And having this injury is not ideal for them, first of all, but for Nelson, more importantly. It's a real, real blow. And hopefully he can get back quicker than the 10 weeks that Marco Silva has suggested, and he can start playing. I think he'll probably end up coming back to Arsenal for a bit. You think if a treatment like this on an injury as serious as this, I don't know if he'll need an operation. Sometimes you do when you have a real bad hamstring tear. And if loan players will come back to the club and do the treatment and rehab there before going back to continue his time at Fulham. So we'll wait and see on that. But yeah, real shame for Reiss Nelson. Moving on to a couple of comments from you guys before we wrap this one up today. Jevon, this was an interesting point, actually, on the corners. Obviously, there's been so much focus on set-piece FC and Nicolas Jova and Arsenal's success from corners. Didn't score from a set-piece against Monaco, by the way. But Jevon picked this up, and other people did as well. Said, hi, Charles, what did you make of Monaco's approach to Arsenal's corners? I think it was very interesting. They intentionally left 3 players on the halfway line. Then Arsenal had to leave players back, hence reducing the number of players who could have attacked the ball and creating the chaos that we have benefited from this season. I thought it was very interesting. Is this something we are going to see more in the Premier League? Yeah, this is a really good point. And Arsenal didn't really threaten from the set pieces. And it was very noticeable from what Monaco were doing that when the corners were coming in, the penalty area was a lot less crowded. And, it's an interesting tactic. There is an argument, I suppose, of thinking, well, they could do that. You could leave 3 players up. Then do you have to cover those 3 players? Probably you would say yes, because you could get picked off on the counter-attack very, very easily. So it would be a big risk, but it could be a very big risk reward as well. If you still put the same amount of players forward to challenge for the corner and there's 3 less defenders in the penalty area, you've got a much better chance of getting your head on the ball, especially with the quality of Arsenal's deliveries as well. So, if a team starts doing this, or teams start doing this, and Arsenal score from a couple of corners because their players are totally unmarked, then you'd probably see teams stop pretty quickly from trying to employ this tactic against Arsenal. But, the success Arsenal are having from set pieces, and not even so much the success, but I think the spotlight that is on it now, every single week, we're going to see teams trying to counter it, because what they're doing at the moment clearly isn't working. The success rate and the goal rate that Arsenal have from these set pieces shows that what teams are doing at the moment is not working. So maybe they do have to think outside the box and do try things a little bit differently. Monaco did that in midweek. Fair play to them. They had success with it. Arsenal didn't really threaten from a corner, from a set piece. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Everton do the same thing. I mean, Everton themselves are notoriously very, very good at set pieces. They've got big defenders, a strong team. You'd think they will be pretty confident that they can handle Arsenal from set pieces. So we'll wait and see what Sean Dyche comes up with this weekend at the Emirates. Here's one from Louis. He says, Saka is 10 times the player Michael Elise will ever be, Charles. This was absolutely not what I was saying yesterday, Louis. I fully accept. I would not be swapping Bukayo Saka for Michael Olise. That is not what I was saying at all. I was just saying that I was sort of talking about the difference in the type of player, or how I view the type of player, in terms of Saka, who's just so good, so precise in everything he does. And then there's Olise, who's more of a kind of maverick type player who, will probably fade, which is why you're right. Saka is 10 times the player Michael Olise is, by the way, because Saka is always in the game. He will always impact games and do things, even if he's not playing well. If Olise is not playing well, he'll fade out of a game and can disappear at times from games. He's a sort of player, everything needs to be going well for him, and then he can really, really shine. Saka's not that type of player, which is what makes him so good. So that's not what I'm saying at all. I would want the pair of them in the same team together, if you see what I mean. I'm just saying that I do feel like Arsenal miss that sort of player who, when things aren't going well, can just do something out of nothing, maybe more than some of the players they have at the moment. I know Saka can do that. He's done it before. He's picked out top corners before with shots when he's cut inside and suddenly burst a game open. You think of Nottingham Forest on the opening day last season as a good example of that. So, yeah, I'm not saying that Michael Olise is better than Bukayo Saka, Louis. That is not what I'm getting at at all. I agree with you. And I would have Saka over Olise all day long. But I quite like both of them, to be fair, which is why I was very, very disappointed when Arsenal didn't make the move for him in the summer, and he went to Bayern Munich instead. Right, that's it from me today, everyone. Well, I say today, maybe not. I might record something a little bit later, depending on what is said at the press conference. So keep your eyes peeled for that, just in case. But if not, I'll be back in the morning to do the usual pre-match preview show. As I said, give me your team selections, your what you think Mikel Arteta should do, your starting 11s. I'll pull some of them together and get them included in that show. Until then, have a great day, everyone. Enjoy the start of the weekend, and I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.